What's poppin', everybody? This is Tom and Joey Entertainment. I am Joey, and welcome back to The Realest News. This is a weekly segment where Tom and I keep it real and discuss the most important news stories going on all around the world in order to keep you informed. And speaking of, I'm joined, as always, by Tom. Tom, what is happening?
What's crack-a-lackin'? Ready for this week's Hot Takes.
Hot Takes! Now, before we get into our main discussion, let's give you a little recap of the week. On Saturday, April 22nd, otherwise known as Earth Day, crowds in Washington, D.C. and all around the world marched in an effort to support science and evidence-based research. Demonstrators gathered in D.C. to hear various speakers praise science as the force moving humanity forward and rail against policymakers that say they are ignoring fact and research in areas including climate change.
Science brings out the best in us. With an informed, optimistic view of the future together, we can, dare I say it, save the world!
Along with the march in D.C., organizers said more than 600 other satellite marches were taking place around the world.
And getting to the French election results, on Sunday, April 23rd, voters in France comprehensively snubbed the country's political establishment, sending far-right populist Marine Le Pen and political novice Emmanuel Macron through to the second round of the country's presidential election, which occurs on May 7th. Macron received 24% of the vote and Le Pen received 21.3% of the vote. It was a stunning victory for Macron, who has never before held an elected office. The world will be tuning in come May 7th, as the results of the election will no doubt have a ripple effect on the rest of the world.
And finally, on Monday, April 24th, 3 months after leaving the White House at the University of Chicago, former President Barack Obama came back into the spotlight to encourage young people to become civically engaged while expressing concern that the current political environment is turning many Americans away.
The single most important thing I can do is to help in any way I can prepare the next generation of leadership to take up the baton.
Throughout this public appearance, despite all the accusations and criticisms coming from the Trump administration, President Obama did not mention the Donald once. So although it was a busy week, our main focus of discussion is regarding the death penalty, and the reason why this subject in particular comes up is because of this. On Monday, April 24th, the state of Arkansas put to death 2 men in the first back-to-back execution in the United States since 2000. Jack Jones and Marcel Williams were among 8 inmates set for execution in April before the state's supply of a lethal injection drug expires at the end of the month. The compressed timeline set off a series of last-minute challenges from inmates regarding the state's lethal injection protocol. The U.S. Supreme Court, the Arkansas Supreme Court, and the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals denied the request for stays from both men. Jones was given the lethal injection at 8:06 p.m. Eastern Time and pronounced dead 14 minutes later, and Williams was given the lethal injection at 11:16 p.m. Eastern Time and pronounced dead 17 minutes later. So with this situation happening in Arkansas earlier in the week, it kind of brought up a topic that I wanted to discuss with Tom, and that is regarding whether we think that the death penalty simply should even exist in the first place. So Tom, what are your initial thoughts on this?
I mean, we've kind of talked about it. I would say we probably have conflicting views. My position is just, if it's there, and I'm not going to vote against it. But if it's not there, then I'm not going to vote for it. I always use the example, if someone had a clipboard on the sidewalk that stops you to sign a petition, that petition was for X, Y, and Z, I may look it over, but if it was for capital punishment, I'd probably just walk it away because, in all honesty, pretty indifferent about this issue. And I can say that I'm lucky to have a life where I never had someone lost or killed by someone that was convicted for murdering them. And I think that really that's where this discussion takes place, because let's be honest, if you're on death row, it's for murder. There are, I'm sure, other cases that people have been sentenced to death for other crimes, of course, but in all reality, people just think of the death penalty as an eye for an eye. You kill someone, you deserve to be killed. We'll get into more statistics about it, but knee-jerk reaction, I'm honestly right in the middle. If we have it, we have it. If we don't, we don't.
Yeah, that's a solid viewpoint, and this is kind of a milestone in the Realist News, because I think this is the first time ever where Tom and I are actually have conflicting views on a subject, which makes things interesting. So my opinion around the death penalty kind of forms around this quote that you may have heard, is that I don't want our government to be able to kill to show killing is wrong. Yeah, that's more of a moral standpoint, but if you look at internationally the way the death penalty is viewed, I mean, you look at the EU, as a country, as a part of the EU, you're not even allowed in to the EU if your country allows the death penalty. You look at the United States, I mean, the United States is one of the biggest powers on the face of the planet. Obviously, we have the death penalty here in the United States in 31 specific states. Don't take my word for it. Here are some statistics regarding the death penalty. The number of executions since 1976 is 1,451. Since 1973, more than 155 people have been released from death row with evidence of their innocence. Now, although that 1,451 number seems high, the number of death sentences per year has dropped dramatically since 1999, with 295 death sentences in 1998 all the way down to just 30 in 2016. Now, really, for me, the biggest statistics from this study by the Death Penalty Information Center, according to a survey of the former and present presidents of the country's top academic criminology societies, 88% of these experts rejected the notion that the death penalty acts as a deterrent to murder. For me, that is the biggest negative towards the death penalty, because like I mentioned before, how the EU doesn't even allow a country into the EU if you have the death penalty. And I think this is one of the main reasons why, is that they just don't view that the death penalty does any significant deterrent. It might a little bit. Obviously, I mean, I'm sure it's not going to do nothing whatsoever. When you have that 88% of those surveyed saying that it does not deter murder, the benefits of the death penalty and having that as a part of your justice system, to me, outweighs the negatives.
When you think about capital punishment, honestly, there's three big arguments you hear. Eye for an eye, so if you kill someone, then you should be killed by the government in this situation. You hear that on one side saying, hey, it's going to deter people from committing this act if you have something that's so severe they wouldn't dare do it. And then three, the cost. And getting to the core essence of deterring people, in all honesty, I searched and searched for articles saying that if you implement capital punishment on any crime, will it deter someone? Something that people overlook is, what person is going to sign up for research saying, well, I was going to kill them, but I decided not to because capital punishment is in place. Trying to find a study that measures that is impossible. It's not feasible. That's something that you go to these criminal justice experts and you ask their opinions, but already you'll never get concrete evidence.
It's one of those surveys where you see posted up around colleges where 98% of students told
never
the
smoked weed.
Never smoked weed, exactly. They just put in small print below that 95% of students who were surveyed by a police officer did not say they ever smoked weed before.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing with like illegal immigration statistics. What illegal immigrant is going to actually sign up to be like surveyed in anything? Obviously, you're going to be like, oh no, I'm totally legal. Yeah, no, not me. It's that guy. And really, this just comes down to the core essence of what I believe on this issue is that pro-capital punishment people are going to use the statistics that are available to try and promote their cause, and they're going to discredit all the ones that are against it. And on the flip side, all the people that are against capital punishment are going to do the exact same thing, which makes me completely believe that at the core essence of this just comes down to, is it morally justified to have a government kill somebody? This is all about human life, and human life cannot be measured in percentages, stats, or anything, because it's human life, it's human nature. This is something that's just not measurable. It never will be. But like I said before, third main argument is the cost. And like me and Joey have talked about before, I honestly think there's a lot of myths about what the true cost of keeping someone in prison for life versus capital punishment actually is.
When it comes to the statistics around the death penalty, there's certain statistics where I agree with you, where one side is going to use it to their advantage and the other side is going to use it to their advantage as well, especially when it comes to statistics like the murder rate and the mentality of the death penalty, whether it deters or not. Because like you said, you can't really measure a mentality of someone. You can't measure what they would do in a certain situation or what they would do given a situation that happened to them. But the one measurable of statistics that does matter is the court costs. Defense costs for death penalty trials in Kansas average about $400,000 per case compared to $100,000 per case when the death penalty is not sought. In Florida, enforcing the death penalty costs $51 million a year, above what it would cost to punish all first-degree murderers with life in prison without parole. Based on the 44 executions Florida has carried out since 1976, that amounts to a cost of $24 million per execution. And finally, the most comprehensive study in the country found that in North Carolina, the death penalty costs $2.16 million per execution over the cost of sentencing murderers to life imprisonment. Now, the study also says that the majority of those costs are done in the pretrial and during the trial, because when a death penalty is sought in a criminal trial, the costs go astronomically way up. Although the costs are increasing during the trial mode, still, when if the death penalty didn't exist, then death penalty in a criminal case would not be sought, and thus those costs would not be influxed as much. But again, like you said, a lot of the people that talk about the death penalty and have opinions on the death penalty, 99% of people are going to base their decision around their own morality. Like you said in the beginning, there is no doubt that I have not had a situation, thankfully, in my life where I can relate to someone either having a family member killed and having that feeling inside of you that you want, like you said, an eye for an eye. And I've also never obviously had the situation where I've had the feeling of killing someone and actually gone and done it and think whether I would want capital punishment or I would want to live my life out in prison. The argument with that is that, especially in my point of view, is that when you have these mass shooters and you have these killers that are then found out that they're just psychologically insane, killing them and giving them the death penalty almost gives them some sort of satisfaction, because it's almost like that's what they want. It's just that they want to commit whatever crime that they want to do, just end it and have that be it. But it can also be said that a worse punishment, and if you're a family member or if one of your family members got killed and this is the criminal that did the murder is on trial for the death penalty, from your point of view, you could argue that a more intense punishment, if you were talking about wanting to get that eye for an eye, a more of a punishment would be spending a life in prison as opposed to just getting lethal injection.
What about the families of the killers too? I mean, you can see these broken families, and that's something we don't even talk about. And it sounds like, why would we even consider it, because they don't deserve anything? I get that, but I mean, these families had nothing to do with it. Watching their family members go on death row or life in prison, I mean, that's something to consider. And even though we haven't had someone personally go through the entire experience, someone in our high school was murdered, and we went to high school with the kid that did it. We have single-handedly heard people's opinions on what they would like to see done to the kid. It's hard not to get angry. I think that in all reality, it's just going to come down to, does the Supreme Court have the emotional capacity to say, you know what, we're the government, we don't have the right to tell someone when their life ends. The reason why I'm always in the middle on this is because me personally, I don't think I have the right to tell anyone who lives or dies, no matter what they've done. If there's a governmental body that's voting on, you know what, we are going to have the most extreme punishment we can possibly think of in the sense of lethal injection, I'm not going to stop it, but I'm also not going to be the first name on the ballot.
Yeah, and really the last point that I'll make in speaking of the families of the criminal, when you look at the statistics I was talking about earlier, since 1973, 155 people have been exonerated from death row because of their innocence. If there is even one instance where someone has gone to death row and has been given a lethal injection, and it comes out later that they have been proven innocent, the benefit of having a lifelong sentence is that you can continue the investigation and continue collecting data and can continue to collecting evidence. If someone's serving life in prison and they're there for 40 years, and then 40 years down the road, data and intelligence comes out that they're proven innocent, they're not going to be very pumped about the 40 years they spent in prison, obviously. They're going to be appreciative of the fact that they weren't just thrown on death row because of a conviction that was given however many years ago, and they're given a second chance at life. So there you have it, everybody. There are thoughts on capital punishment, the death penalty. If you think that capital punishment should still exist, if you think that it should go away, or if you've had a general question regarding iViews, please let us know in the comment section below. As always, we love to hear from you. Remember, if you enjoy what we do, remember to hit that like button underneath that video and hit that subscribe button if you want to come back and see more videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And as always, I'm Joey.
And I'm Tom.
We will see you next time. Peace.